TIFU by accidentally becoming the face of a fake cult and getting arrested mid-zoo tour. This all happened about a year ago, but I'm only now getting to the point where I can laugh about it. For reference, I'm a 29-year-old guy who lives in a mid-sized city in the US, and I've always been the kind of person who says yes to weird experiences. That's pretty much how this whole thing started. A friend of mine, Max, runs a small local theater group and wanted help promoting their new absurdist play. The premise was something about a guru who spoke in riddles and nonsense and convinced people to join a fake religion based on climbing trees to gain enlightenment. Think Monty Python meets Wes Anderson levels of weird. Max had this idea. What if we didn't advertise the play as a play? What if, instead, we pretended it was a real thing and let curiosity drive people to it? You know, build hype by making it mysterious and slightly creepy. I thought it sounded genius. So I agreed to play the guru. They gave me this flowing white robe, a fake beard, and aviator sunglasses. My name was Guru Travion. Yes, Travion. Because, according to the lore, the highest spiritual state was Triatopia. Max printed out pamphlets with gibberish aphorisms like, "The leaf that falls remembers the wind," and asterisk, "3 squirrels cannot build one nest unless they speak the bark dung." Asterisk, you get the vibe. We started holding sermons in public parks. People gathered, mostly out of confusion. I would sit cross-legged in a tree. I'm not a climber, by the way, this was a hazard, and speak nonsense in a soothing voice while Max handed out pamphlets and sold tickets to the initiation ceremony, aka the play's opening night. We never said it was real, but we also didn't say it was fake. At first, it was funny and harmless. We had a Reddit thread going, a few TikToks were made, and soon enough we were kind of viral. The bark dung cult trended locally. Someone even made a parody wiki. A few people seemed to get the joke. But then things got weird. A guy started showing up to every sermon. We'll call him Dylan. Dylan was deep in. Like, too deep. He wore his own robe. He stopped speaking in English. He climbed trees way higher than anyone asked him to. He brought friends. They called me Branch Father. I told Max, "Hey man, we might need to dial this back." Max, who had now sold out 3 nights of shows, said, "Dude, this is the best thing we've ever done." Then came the zoo. I work part-time as a weekend tour guide at our city's zoo. It's a fun side gig and lets me hang out with otters, so win-win. Anyway, I was supposed to guide a birthday group, just kids, balloons, the usual. That morning, I stopped by Max's place to drop off some extra pamphlets, and he begged me to wear the Guru Travion outfit just one more time for a quick video shoot. I said sure, filmed 10 minutes of me talking about the sacred giraffe, then rushed straight to the zoo, not realizing I was still wearing the white robe under my jacket. Now here's where it escalates. I'm halfway through giving this tour near the primate exhibit when Dylan shows up. In full robe, with 15 people. They march in single file behind me like I'm Moses leading them out of Egypt. I try to ignore them, thinking maybe they'll just blend into the crowd. Nope. One of them starts humming. Another's holding a damn tree branch like a staff. They're chanting "Climb high, see far" in unison. A parent asks me if this is part of the show. I stammer something about performance art. It gets worse. One of Dylan's people, an older woman, very committed, breaks from the group and climbs the monkey habitat fence. The gibbons start losing their minds. A zookeeper runs out screaming. The woman yells, the bark tongue awakens, and tries to hug a howler monkey. It screams and throws what I hope was fruit. Security is called. I try to explain. I really do. But there's a viral video of me, robed and sunglasses on, saying the giraffe is our silent sentinel from earlier that morning. One of the cultists yells, "You promised us tree ascension," as he's being handcuffed. Another asks the cops if they've tasted the leaves of knowledge. I'm detained along with all of them. At the precinct, I'm trying to explain to 2 very tired officers that this was a marketing campaign gone wrong. One asks if I'm on drugs. I tell them no, but I do understand how this looks. They eventually let me go after Max shows up, shows them the playbill, and everyone realizes I'm not an actual cult leader, just an idiot in a bathrobe with a flair for improv. The fallout? The zoo banned me for life. Like, forever. I tried to appeal, but they were very clear. You incited a group to infiltrate an animal enclosure and potentially traumatized a howler monkey.
Fair.
Max's played it great. He leaned all the way into the scandal. The news ran a headline like "Local Theater Group Denies Cult Allegations, Sells Out Show." The Bark-Dung movement even has a Discord now. I refuse to join. I still occasionally get recognized at bars. Some drunk guy will whisper "branch father" like it's a damn code word. One woman tried to get me to bless her potted plant. I told her I was agnostic and left. So yeah, that's how I became the face of a fake cult, ruined my zoo gig, and gained a small but disturbing following of tree-climbing spiritualists. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. TIFU by accidentally ruining my friend's wedding with a karaoke performance. So this happened a few weeks ago, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. I'm hoping writing it out will somehow help me process the sheer cringe and horror of it all. Let me set the stage. I have a group of friends who are all pretty close-knit. We've been hanging out since college, and while we've all gone our separate ways career-wise, we make sure to get together for major milestones. So when my friend Jamie, who's essentially my best friend since freshman year, announced she was getting married to her longtime boyfriend Sam, it was a big deal. Of course, I was ecstatic for her. The wedding was set to be a beautiful, small, intimate affair at a gorgeous venue in the countryside. The kind of place with sprawling lawns, a rustic barn, and fairy lights strung up everywhere. It was a dream, and Jamie had been planning it for months. I, of course, offered to help with whatever I could, but Jamie insisted that everything was under control. She even told me she wasn't doing a big reception with speeches or anything too formal. It was going to be a laid-back celebration with family and friends. Fast forward to the big day. The ceremony was beautiful. Everyone was emotional, and I was doing my best to keep it together. After the vows and the rings and all the traditional wedding stuff, we moved into the reception area. The atmosphere was relaxed, people were mingling, eating, and enjoying themselves. Now, I'm not sure if this is a universal thing, or if it's just my weird group of friends, but we have this ongoing joke about karaoke. Every time we hang out, it's somehow a running joke that someone will end up doing karaoke, even though it's rare that it actually happens. We all have a couple of go-to songs that we'll joke about singing, but no one ever actually does it. I guess it's just a fun, silly tradition that keeps coming up. So, during the reception, after the speeches were done and people had started drinking more freely, the DJ, who is also a family friend, announced that it was time for a surprise performance. Apparently, Jamie had planned for someone to sing a special song for Sam, a little tribute to their relationship. The moment the words left the DJ's mouth, my friend Laura, who was sitting next to me, nudged me and whispered, "You should totally go up and sing something. It'd be hilarious." Now, let me be clear. I am not a good singer. I'm the type of person who will sing along to the radio in the car, but that's about it. I know my limits. However, the combination of alcohol, the festive atmosphere, and my love of being the center of attention made me think, why not? I mean, what could go wrong, right? I whispered back, "What should I sing?" She looked at me like I was an idiot and said, "You know, you have to do, 'I Will Always Love You.' It's a classic, and it's perfect for weddings. Everyone will love it." At this point, I'm already tipsy and have convinced myself that this will be a hilarious, harmless little joke. I've seen people do karaoke at weddings before, and it was all in good fun. Plus, it was Jamie's wedding. She'd think it was funny, right? I bolted for the stage without a second thought. The DJ handed me the mic, and I just kind of stood there for a second, waiting for the music to start. The first few notes of Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You" filled the air, and it hit me. Oh my God, I'm actually doing this. But there was no turning back. I started singing. It wasn't good. To be honest, I barely made it through the first verse before I was way off key. At first, people seemed to laugh, which I took as a sign that I was doing the right thing, you know? Everyone's laughing, it's all in good fun, and maybe this will be a funny memory for Jamie and Sam. But then I started hearing murmurs. I couldn't tell if they were laughing with me or at me, but at that point I was too deep into it. I pushed through, singing louder, trying to make it more dramatic. At one point, I actually tried to hit a note that was clearly way out of my range. That was a mistake. I think I sounded like a dying cat, and that's when I noticed the room had gone awkwardly silent. I looked up and saw Jamie and Sam at the front table, their faces frozen in disbelief. I was so caught up in the moment that I didn't register their expressions at first. But as I kept singing, I saw Jamie's face go from confusion to concern. Her lips were pressed tightly together, and she kept looking at Sam, like she was trying to figure out if this was part of the plan. I somehow managed to finish the song, but it felt like the longest 5 minutes of my life. When I put the mic down and shuffled off the stage, the room was dead silent. Not in an impressed way, but in an "oh my god, what just happened" kind of way. I felt the heat rush to my face. I could feel all eyes on me, and the weight of regret hit me like a truck. I tried to make my way back to the table, but I could barely meet anyone's gaze. The awkwardness in the air was palpable. I sat down next to Laura, who was barely holding it together. She kept whispering, "That was amazing," through her laughter, but I could tell it was one of those laughing at you, not with you moments. As the evening went on, I noticed the mood had shifted. The DJ was still playing music, but no one was really dancing or chatting as much. Jamie didn't come over to me, and Sam looked like he had just seen a ghost. There was this weird, thick tension in the air. I tried to go up to Jamie to apologize, but she seemed to be avoiding me. She was talking to some of her family members, but she didn't really acknowledge me. Finally, I caught her on the way to the bathroom and said, "Hey, I'm really sorry about the song. I didn't mean to ruin anything. I just thought it would be funny." Jamie, looking visibly uncomfortable, forced a smile and said, "It's fine." "Really? It's just not what I expected, but it's fine." I could tell she wasn't fine, and that's when I realized I had messed up big time. The rest of the night was a blur of awkward interactions, but I could tell Jamie was upset. She didn't even come near me for the rest of the reception. I tried to make things right by sending her a message the next day, but it was clear that my performance had seriously dampened the mood. In the days that followed, I kept texting her, apologizing and trying to make amends. Finally, she called me and said, "It's not that you sang, it's just that it wasn't the time or place. It was supposed to be a special moment for Sam and me, and it just wasn't. I really need some space to process all of this."
So, yeah.
It's been a few weeks, and we're still not back to normal. I'm pretty sure my karaoke disaster ruined what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. TLDR, got drunk at my best friend's wedding, thought I was being funny by singing "I Will Always Love You" karaoke style, totally ruined the vibe, and now my friend is mad at me. Moral of the story? Never do karaoke at a wedding unless you're a professional, or at least know how to stay on key. I, 29M, work in tech, the kind of job where people wear hoodies to meetings and pretend ping pong tables are a legitimate benefit. You know the type. I recently got hired at a startup that was all buzzwords and optimism, led by a 35-year-old founder who looked like he microdosed for breakfast and spoke in TED Talk syntax. Let's call him Bryce. 3 weeks into my new job, Bryce gathers the team of 15 and announces we're going on a disruption retreat. I figured it was going to be a weekend of corporate nonsense, trust falls, and too many vegan burritos. But Bryce was adamant. No phones, no laptops, no watches. "Time is a construct," he said, grinning like a white-toothed cult leader. I laughed. I shouldn't have. We board this sketchy shuttle van Friday morning, destination unknown. No one tells us where we're going. The windows are tinted like it's a CIA op, and the driver's wearing a robe. I thought it was a bit like, "Hey, look, we're being mysterious to spark innovation." But after 2 hours of driving into what I can only describe as nowhere, I realize this isn't a retreat. It's an experience. We pull into this compound, big wooden gates, no cell service, surrounded by forest. It looked like a rehab facility if rehab came with yoga yurts and ritualistic bonfires. A group of people wearing identical earth-toned linen outfits greets us with herbal tea and chanting. I'm a city kid. I don't do chanting unless it's at a playoff game. But everyone else is smiling like they've been hypnotized by essential oils. The first red flag should have been the initiation dinner. Instead of drinks and networking, we sit on floor cushions and are served a cleansing broth in total silence. At the end, Bryce stands and says, "Tonight, we shed our old selves. You are not your LinkedIn bio. You are reborn." The guy next to me starts crying.
Crying.
Because he isn't his LinkedIn bio anymore. That night, they take all our belongings. Phones, wallets, keys. They call it the unburdening. We each get a white robe and a name tag with a new name. Mine was Sage Bird. I'm 6 feet 2 inches with a beard. I looked like a knockoff Obi-Wan Kenobi. Still, I play along because I'm thinking this is all just some Silicon Valley wilderness therapy. Maybe there'll be Wi-Fi in the morning. There wasn't. The next day starts at 5:30 a.m. with something called the Awakening Ceremony, which is essentially screaming into the woods followed by interpretive dance. I'm 90% sure someone dislocated a hip. We then do trust circles, where you stare into someone's eyes and chant affirmations until one of you cries. I ended up partnered with the office HR lady who whispered, "I feel your past lives," and stroked my forehead. Then came the shedding, which sounded like a snake thing but turned out to be a group exercise where you confess your greatest shame in front of everyone, followed by communal sobbing. I confessed that I once rage quit a Zoom call and blamed it on a power outage. Bryce said, "You are brave, Sage Bird," and 3 people hugged me. At this point, I'm like 30% amused, 30% scared, and 40% trying to figure out if this violates any labor laws. On day 3, I find a hidden room behind a stack of yoga mats in the main lodge. Inside is a whiteboard with a flowchart titled Ascension Path. I kid you not, it had levels like a video game. Newcomer.
Seeker.
Luminary. At the top, the fully aligned. Beside it, Bryce's name in glitter. It clicked. This wasn't a retreat. This was a full-on cult with Slack channels. I tried to talk to my coworker Janine, but she was deep in something called vocal toning, and every time I said the word cult she'd go, "Shoo, don't block the frequency." I decided I needed to escape. Problem: we were at least 10 miles from anything resembling a road, with no phones and no clue where the van went. My opportunity came that night. Bryce was leading the inner illumination, where we were all supposed to walk barefoot in the dark and listen for the voice of the soil. I pretended to hear a root chakra emergency and ducked out into the trees. I ran. For hours. In a white robe. Through mud and twigs and several spiderwebs that are probably still in my soul. Eventually, I hit a road. A real road. Flagged down a pickup truck driven by a guy named Carl who sold bait for a living. I told him I'd just escaped a cult. He said, "Third one this month," and handed me a Mountain Dew. Carl drove me to the nearest town, where I found a gas station and begged to use their phone. I called my roommate, who thought I was on a yoga retreat and had already started dividing up my stuff. He picked me up and drove me back to the city. I emailed HR the next day and said I was resigning for personal reasons. They responded with, "We're sorry to see Sagebird go." I'm not kidding. 2 weeks later, I get a handwritten note in the mail with no return address. Inside was a dried lavender sachet and a card that read, "The soil remembers your steps." I think I'm still on some enlightenment mailing list.
So yeah.
TIFU by joining a cult because I thought it was a corporate retreat. I'm now freelancing and only take remote jobs. If someone tells me to find my inner compass, I throw my laptop into a river. Stay safe out there, fellow sagebirds. TIFU by accidentally exposing my secret to my entire family during Thanksgiving dinner. It all started innocently enough. Thanksgiving had always been a time for family, food, and laughter in my house. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and we all made it a tradition to gather at my parents' house for the big dinner. It's the one time of year when everyone's together, and we usually take turns doing the cooking and cleaning up. This year, I had volunteered to bring the mashed potatoes and some pies. I figured it would be easy, nothing too complicated. My life has been pretty uneventful lately. I'm in my late 20s, working a steady but unremarkable job in a small city. My family, though supportive, has always been a little pushy about my lack of progress. As the youngest, they all seem to think I should be married with kids, or at least have some kind of major life milestone to show for my adulthood. I, however, have been pretty content with my routine. Work, hang out with friends, go to the gym, and binge-watch shows on Netflix. In their eyes, though, I'm a little bit of a disappointment. So, when they started talking about plans for the future during dinner, it felt like a spotlight was shining on me. To set the stage a bit, my family is loud, gregarious, and very open about their opinions. My dad's the jokester, my mom's the peacekeeper, and my siblings, well, they all have their lives pretty much together. They've got their careers, relationships, and even kids. Meanwhile, I've been floating along, just figuring things out as I go. Not that anyone in my family would understand that. So, as we sat around the table, eating turkey and mashed potatoes, the ones I made, the conversation inevitably turned to me. My mom asked, as she always did, "So, any new developments with your life? Any serious relationships lately?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly trying to get me to spill something juicy. I, of course, hadn't been seeing anyone recently, so I fumbled for a response. "Nope, still just doing my thing, you know?" I said, trying to brush it off. That's when my older brother, Paul, jumped in. "Come on, seriously? You've got to be dating someone by now, right? All your friends are in relationships. You're the last single person in the group." I gave him a look, hoping he would drop it. But no, he just leaned forward and grinned. "Are you hiding someone from us? A secret girlfriend?" The pressure was starting to mount. I didn't want to come across as a loser, but I also didn't want to lie outright. I had been in a few casual relationships in the past year, but none of them were serious enough to bring up. However, there was something else I had been keeping under wraps, a secret that I had told only a couple of close friends about. See, for the past few months, I had been dealing with something that I was still coming to terms with. I had been secretly exploring my sexuality. I hadn't come out to my family because, honestly, I wasn't sure how they'd react. I had a sneaking suspicion that my parents, especially my dad, might not take it well. And my siblings, well, they were a mixed bag, some more understanding than others, but I didn't want to risk making Thanksgiving uncomfortable. So I kept it to myself, continuing to present a mostly straight front. But that day, with the constant prodding from my brother and the fact that I was feeling a bit tipsy from the wine, I blurted out something that I didn't intend to say. "Well, actually, I've been seeing someone," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. This is where things went south. Immediately, all eyes were on me. "Oh, really?" my dad said, leaning forward with a grin on his face. "Who's the lucky person? Tell us about them." I panicked. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to come out. But there was no going back now. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I pointed at the mashed potatoes I had just served. "I've been seeing mashed potatoes," I said, trying to make it sound like a joke. Everyone froze for a moment. My brother raised an eyebrow. "What?" I could feel my face turning red. I knew I was digging myself deeper into a hole, but I couldn't stop. "Yeah, you know, mashed potatoes. They're really great. I've been spending a lot of time with them lately." I chuckled nervously, trying to downplay the awkwardness. They're always there for me when I need them, you know? The table was dead silent. My family didn't know whether to laugh or to look at me like I had lost my mind. My dad finally broke the silence with a confused, "You're dating mashed potatoes?" I immediately realized what I had said. My heart sank. I had just made a complete fool of myself. I could feel my face burning, and I quickly tried to backpedal. No, that's not what I meant." I stammered. I meant, I couldn't find the words. Forget what I said. But my older sister, Sarah, wasn't letting me off the hook that easily. No, you can't just say something like that and then back out. What's going on with you? Seriously, we're family. You can talk to us." I sat there, struggling to think of a way to explain myself. I couldn't just admit to being secretly questioning my sexuality in front of everyone, but I also couldn't keep going with the mashed potato nonsense. Finally, I decided to just say it, to get it over with. "Okay, fine. I've been seeing someone, but it's not mashed potatoes. I just, I've been trying to figure things out, I said, nervously glancing around the table. There was a pause. My dad looked at me, squinting like he was trying to process the words. Wait, you're saying you've been seeing someone, but you don't want to tell us who? I nodded. Yeah, that's exactly it. Finally, my mom, who had been quietly watching the scene unfold, spoke up. Sweetheart, if there's someone special in your life, you don't need to be embarrassed. We just want you to be happy. You know that, right? I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My mom was always the level-headed one, and hearing her say that made me realize how much I had been overthinking everything. Slowly, the rest of my family started to relax, and they began to tease me about my earlier potato comment, which I could now laugh off. My brother called me a mashed potato enthusiast, and even my dad cracked a joke about how he always thought I was a little starchy. After the dinner, I did sit down with my mom privately and told her a bit more about what I was going through. She was surprisingly understanding, and while she had some questions, she told me that no matter what, she just wanted me to be true to myself. It was a conversation I hadn't expected to have, but I'm glad I did. In the end, it wasn't the Thanksgiving I had planned, but it was a Thanksgiving I'll never forget. And honestly, even though I embarrassed myself and nearly ruined my own coming out moment, it ended up being a turning point. I still have a long way to go in terms of being fully open with my family, but now I know that when I'm ready, they'll be there for me, even if I accidentally announce my secret in the most ridiculous way possible. Oh, and the mashed potatoes? They were delicious. To full by accidentally becoming the center of attention at a wedding I wasn't invited to. I never thought my life would be derailed by something as simple as attending a wedding, but here I am, sitting in a cafe, writing this because the sheer ridiculousness of the situation won't leave me alone. And I'm hoping it will make some sort of sense once I get it all out. It started on a Saturday afternoon, the day of my best friend Sarah's wedding. I had been invited months ago, but that was before she and I had a huge falling out. She had been dating this guy, Mark, for nearly 3 years, and when I found out he was cheating on her, I couldn't keep quiet about it. I confronted him at a bar one night, which led to an uncomfortable scene. Sarah and I had some long, emotional conversations, but in the end, she chose to stay with him. That was the beginning of the end of our friendship. She uninvited me from the wedding shortly after, and I was devastated. I had been with her through so much, through her first heartbreaks, her family struggles, and all the late-night chats about life and love. It felt like betrayal. But after the fallout, I tried to move on, and for the most part, I did. I still thought about her from time to time, but I didn't try to contact her. I respected her decision, even though it hurt. Fast forward to the wedding day. The entire town was talking about it, and even though I had been excluded, I decided to go out and try to enjoy my day. I needed a distraction, and what better way to take my mind off things than to grab a coffee and read a book? The wedding venue was just a short walk from the cafe, and I couldn't help but glance at the people walking by in their fancy outfits. There was a soft, pleasant breeze, and I had no intention of causing any trouble. I really wasn't expecting to find myself in the middle of a disaster. I was about halfway through my latte when my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "Are you at Sarah's wedding?" Confused, I replied. "No. Why?" She responded with a picture of me. Well, a picture of someone who looked just like me, standing by the entrance of the wedding venue. My heart sank. It wasn't a clear shot, but it was undeniably someone who looked like me wearing a simple dress and black heels. I froze. Had I been spotted? I shook my head and went back to my coffee, dismissing the idea. But a few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Sarah's cousin, Emma, who I had always gotten along with, even when things between Sarah and I weren't the greatest. "Hey, are you at Sarah's wedding?" she asked, her voice tight with something I couldn't quite place. No, Emma," I replied. "Why would I be there? I was uninvited." "Well, are you sure? Because we've been looking for you. You look exactly like the woman standing next to the bar." That hit me like a ton of bricks. I began to feel this surge of panic rise in my chest, and my mind raced through possible explanations. Could someone really be dressed like me at a wedding I wasn't invited to? Could someone think I was supposed to be there? My confusion only deepened when Emma started telling me that Sarah's father had asked about me. Apparently, someone had slipped into the reception without anyone noticing, and after a few awkward exchanges, they had assumed I was a long-lost relative of Sarah's family, someone they just didn't recognize because of all the new faces at the wedding. Emma swore it was a huge misunderstanding and told me I should clear things up before Sarah found out. But by the time I processed everything, it was too late. In a fit of panic, I decided to go to the wedding venue to straighten things out and explain I was not part of Sarah's family. As soon as I arrived at the entrance, I was greeted by an enthusiastic waiter who assumed I was a guest and handed me a drink ticket. Without even thinking, I followed the flow of people into the reception hall. I figured I could just clear things up and then leave quietly. No one would notice. But that was my first mistake. I entered the room, and the second I stepped in, someone tapped me on the shoulder. "Hey, I'm so glad you could make it." It was Sarah's aunt, a sweet woman who I had always liked. She looked at me with joy in her eyes and pulled me into a hug. What? I sputtered, totally thrown off by her warmth. "You made it. You look great. Go on, mingle. Everyone's looking forward to meeting you." She beamed, completely oblivious to the fact that I was a total stranger to most of these people. I had no idea how to backtrack. At this point, I was too deep into this mess. People kept greeting me, calling me by names I didn't recognize. One man in a tuxedo even went so far as to ask me if I wanted to sit next to him for the toast, and before I could object, he led me to the front of the room. I took a seat and tried to blend into the background, but it was hopeless. Sarah's father stood up to give a speech, and to my absolute horror, he smiled at me and said, "I'm so happy our dear cousin, insert name I didn't know, could make it today. Here's to family." The room erupted in applause, and I awkwardly raised my glass, wondering how I had gotten into this absurd situation. Was I going to ruin this wedding for real? How long could I keep this up? How long could I pretend to be someone I wasn't? Eventually, I found a way to slip out of the reception unnoticed, feeling like I had somehow walked out of a nightmare. I stood outside, still shaking, trying to process everything that had just happened. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Sarah herself. "Who the hell is this person who looks like you and is pretending to be at my wedding? I know you're mad, but this is not funny. I want answers." I immediately apologized, explaining the misunderstanding and that I never meant to ruin anything. She never responded. A week later, I received a very long, very emotional message from her, apologizing for everything that had gone down between us. She admitted that she was in a weird place and had made decisions that weren't fair to me, but she also couldn't just forgive how I confronted Mark. She still married him, but I'm guessing that wedding will never be the same. In the end, I didn't get my friendship back, and I never really cleared up the whole stranger at the wedding issue. But I do know one thing. I'll never be the same person I was before that day. I learned a very important lesson about avoiding uninvited weddings. I also learned that when you think you're completely invisible in a situation, you can still end up making a fool of yourself. So yeah, that was my TIFU. If you ever end up in the same situation, I have one piece of advice. Just leave before someone gives you a drink ticket. You'll thank me later. This happened over the past 3 months and only fully unraveled last week. I work at a mid-sized marketing firm. The kind with open floor seating, casual Fridays, and a coffee machine that sounds like a dying goat, but we all treat it like a sacred relic because it makes espresso shots. My department has about 30 people. I work in analytics, mostly behind the scenes pulling data for the client-facing teams. It's not exactly glamorous, but I like it. The work is predictable, the people are nice, and I get to wear noise-canceling headphones without judgment. 3 months ago, our department got a new manager.
His name is Patrick.
Patrick transferred from another branch, and from the first moment he walked in, it was clear he was a walk-around and talk-to-people kind of boss. Not the email, you at 3 a.m. type, but the drop by your desk, lean on your partition, how's your weekend going type. I'm not built for that kind of management style, but whatever, I tried to roll with it. The weird thing started about a week into his arrival. I was working on a report when Patrick came by and said, "Hey, I just sent you an email." Can you take a look and get back to me today? I didn't get an email. I checked everything, spam folder, inbox, promotions, even the old Gmail tricks like searching from Patrick. Nothing. I figured maybe he hadn't hit send yet, so I nodded and said sure, thinking it would show up soon. It didn't. The next day, he asked me if I'd had a chance to look at the file he sent. I told him I hadn't received it. He gave me this weird look, half disbelief, half confusion, and just said, okay, maybe I sent it to the wrong address. This kind of thing started happening a lot. Like every couple of days, Patrick would ask me about emails, tasks, or updates that I supposedly got but didn't. He even once referenced a conversation we had on Tuesday, except I'd been working remotely that day. At first I thought maybe I was losing it. Maybe I had some undiagnosed form of work amnesia. So I started writing down everything. Every conversation, every task assigned, every email I sent or received. It became a mini obsession. I didn't want to look incompetent, especially in front of a new boss. I also started responding vaguely. Whenever he'd ask me something like, "Did you get that spreadsheet I forwarded?" I'd say, "I saw something come through, but let me double check." Or if he said, "Thanks for the update yesterday," I'd smile and nod like, "Yeah, anytime." I figured maybe I was missing things or he was confused, but I didn't want to make waves. This went on for weeks. He stopped coming to my desk as much. He became cooler in meetings. My name started disappearing from projects I was normally included in. He stopped inviting me to the weekly huddle. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but even my coworker Sam noticed and asked if I was okay with being phased out. I had no idea what I'd done. Then, last week, everything blew up. It was our quarterly all-hands meeting. Patrick was giving a presentation on new team workflows. He was clicking through slides, assigning team leads for upcoming campaigns, and I noticed my name wasn't on anything. Not even as support. That was weird, considering I was lead analyst for 3 of our biggest clients. During Canday, Sam asked about the analytics team's role in the new setup, and Patrick said, into a microphone, in front of 100 people, "Well, I'd love to keep working with Opie, but it's been really hard to get in touch with him. He hasn't responded to any of my emails or messages in the past 2 months. We've tried including him, but at some point, you have to work with people who are responsive." I felt the air leave the room. My boss thought I was ghosting him. Every muscle in my body turned to cement. I was so stunned I couldn't even speak up to defend myself. After the meeting, I grabbed Sam and told him what had been going on. Sam's eyes went wide and said, "Wait, what's your work email?" I told him. He stared at me and said, "Patrick's been emailing OP Jones this whole time. My work email is OP_Jones. Just a stupid underscore. That's it." That tiny underscore was the glitch in the matrix that ruined 3 months of communication. Some poor soul named OP Jones, apparently an intern who left the company last year, had been receiving all my tasks, updates, spreadsheets, and questions from Patrick. Meanwhile, I was getting iced out because Patrick thought I was ignoring him. I immediately scheduled a meeting with HR and Patrick to explain the misunderstanding. I showed them my logs, the missing emails, and the incorrect address. Patrick turned bright red. He was genuinely shocked and apologetic. He said, "I thought you were just passive-aggressively refusing to engage. I even told HR I was considering putting you on a PP. A performance improvement plan. For ghosting emails I never got." HR was chill about it. They updated my contact info in the directory, flagged the inactive email, and even gave me a day off for the emotional whiplash, which was a nice gesture, though honestly, I think they just felt bad. Patrick has been trying to make up for it ever since. He stops by with coffee, loops me into every project now almost too eagerly, and even asked me to help design the new onboarding protocol so this doesn't happen again. The cherry on top? I finally got access to the OP Jones inbox. It was a digital tomb. Every message from Patrick was sitting there, unread, like some archaeological record of a failed professional relationship. The first one simply said, "Hey OP, looking forward to working with you." And the last one, "Let me know if you're still with the company." TIFU by accidentally stealing a car during a late-night drive to get some snacks. So, this happened a few nights ago, and I'm still trying to process how in the world I ended up in the middle of a police investigation with an impounded car and a story that's somehow both embarrassing and terrifying.
Let me set the scene for you.
It all started around midnight. I had been cooped up in my apartment all day, binge-watching a new show and ordering way too much takeout. I had just finished a burger and was craving something sweet, like donuts or ice cream, and decided I needed a snack run. Normally, I'd walk, but I had been too lazy all day and my car was parked out front. I'm not one to drive much, but on that particular night, I just didn't want to leave the comfort of my apartment, so I grabbed my keys, threw on a jacket, and got in my car. Now, I live in a decent neighborhood, so nothing felt out of the ordinary. I didn't notice anything weird when I got into the car or when I started it up. Everything seemed perfectly normal, and I was half watching something on my phone while driving to the nearest 24-hour store. I rolled down the window because the night air was nice, and I was feeling good, one of those life-is-good moments. I pulled up to the store, parked in a spot, and went inside to grab what I needed. When I got back to my car, there was a guy standing near it. He was leaning against a parked truck, and as I approached, he said, "Nice ride, man." I gave him a friendly nod, not thinking much of it, and threw my bags into the back seat. Just as I was about to close the door, the guy came over and tapped the window. "Hey, just so you know, you left the keys in the ignition," he said. I blinked at him. "What?" "No, I didn't." He pointed at the ignition. Sure enough, there they were, the keys sticking out of the ignition. I had no memory of doing that. I must have left them there while I was grabbing my snacks, but I could have sworn I took them out when I parked. It was a weird moment, but I shrugged it off as a mistake. I thanked the guy and pulled the keys out, locking the doors before heading home. Here's where it gets weird, though. The next morning, I woke up to an unfamiliar sound. It was like a faint clicking noise, and I thought it was just the sound of construction or maybe a neighbor's alarm system. I groggily got out of bed and walked over to my window to check. That's when I saw something that made my stomach drop. My car wasn't there. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, thinking maybe I was still half asleep. But no, it was definitely gone. My first thought was that I had been robbed. I rushed outside, hoping I had just parked it somewhere else. But no, nothing. I stood there for a few minutes, panicking, thinking that somehow someone had gotten into my car and driven it off, or worse, it had been towed. But it didn't make sense. I hadn't parked illegally. I quickly ran inside and called the police. They asked me for my car's make, model, and license plate number, and after a few minutes of them confirming that they didn't have it listed as stolen, they told me to contact the towing companies around the area just in case. So I did that. I called every towing company in a 5-mile radius, getting more frantic with every call. None of them had seen my car. I was starting to freak out. Maybe I had misplaced it? Maybe I was just losing my mind? At this point, I was convinced I had either been robbed or lost my mind, and neither thought was comforting. Then, a few hours later, my phone rang. It was a local police officer. "Sir, we have your vehicle," he said. My heart stopped. "Wait, what?" I stammered. The officer explained that my car had been found abandoned near the outskirts of town, and they had just towed it to the impound lot. They'd found it parked on the side of the road, running, with the doors wide open. The keys were still in the ignition, and it was clear someone had been inside. I was completely thrown off at this point. I asked the officer if they could check the security footage at the impound lot to figure out what happened, and he said they would, but it didn't take long for me to realize how messed up everything was. I went down to the impound lot later that day to pick up my car, still confused and unnerved by everything that had happened. As I walked into the lot, I saw my car parked in the back, just as the officer had described. And standing next to it was the guy from the night before, the one who had told me that I left the keys in the ignition. It turns out I had not stolen my car in the traditional sense. I had accidentally taken his car. The guy had a very similar car to mine, down to the exact same color and model. I had driven off in his car, thinking it was mine, without realizing it. The keys in my car were the wrong keys. I had somehow mixed up his car with mine at the store parking lot. The real kicker? He had apparently left his keys in the ignition while he went inside the store, and I just happened to get into it. He had to call the cops to report it stolen once he realized it was gone, and when the police found it, they figured out that I had mistakenly driven off in his car, and not mine. He was apparently pretty chill about the whole thing once I explained the mix-up, but I was horrified. I had just been casually driving around in someone else's car for hours, thinking it was mine. The fact that I didn't get pulled over, or worse, was one of the craziest things about the whole situation. So, yeah, that was my TIFU moment. I accidentally stole someone's car, drove it around for a while, and caused a whole mess. Thankfully, the guy wasn't angry and the police didn't press any charges, but I'm never going to forget the sheer panic of realizing that my car was gone and then finding out that it was all just a stupid mix-up. Lesson learned: always double-check the car you're getting into before you drive off, and if you leave your keys in the ignition, maybe don't do it in a parking lot full of cars that look the same. I've been living in an apartment complex for a few years now, and I'd say I'm pretty well established here. I know my neighbors, I've had a few awkward run-ins with the landlord, and I'm fairly confident I can navigate the complex's parking lot without ending up in someone else's spot. All in all, a fairly uneventful existence. But that all changed last Thursday night. I should mention that I live alone. Not because I have any great desire to be a loner, but simply because I've had a string of terrible roommate experiences. Most of my roommates, as it turns out, had either severe mental issues or were just outright irresponsible. I figured I could handle being alone. Plus, I've grown quite comfortable in my solitude. No one to share the bathroom with, no one to complain about the thermostat settings, no one to eat the last of the cereal. It's peaceful. That night, I'd spent the evening doing what any normal person does: binge-watching an embarrassing number of episodes of a crime show on Netflix and eating junk food. I was feeling a bit of a cold coming on, so I was wrapped in a blanket, curled up on the couch, and enjoying my solitary evening. The weather outside had turned a bit cold, the wind was howling, and it was one of those nights where you're glad to be inside. I was on my 4th episode of the night when the knock came at the door. Now, I'm not the type to answer the door for just anyone. Usually, I ignore it unless it's a scheduled delivery or someone I'm expecting. But I thought it was odd that someone would be knocking this late. It was almost 9 p.m., so I figured maybe it was a neighbor or perhaps the maintenance guy needed to check something in my apartment. I hesitated for a second, then got up and walked to the door. I opened it and there was a guy standing there. He wasn't anyone I recognized, which immediately threw me off. He was wearing a long coat, a hat, and had a somewhat disheveled appearance. He didn't look threatening, but he was definitely out of place. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he started, his voice somewhat shaky. "But I locked myself out of my apartment. I was wondering if you could help me out." I paused for a moment, trying to figure out what he meant. I hadn't seen this guy around the building before, and his request seemed a little off. I don't think I can help you with that," I replied cautiously. "I don't really know how to." He cut me off, quickly stepping forward just a little too eagerly. "It's really simple," he said. "I just need to borrow your phone so I can call the landlord. I don't have any way to reach him, and I don't want to wait outside in the cold all night." I was already starting to feel uncomfortable, but I didn't want to be rude. I've always tried to be a decent person, so I thought, fine, I'll just lend him my phone for a quick call, and then he'll be on his way. I reached for my phone, which was charging on the kitchen counter just inside the door, but I didn't want to let him come inside, so I stepped back into the apartment and handed it to him over the threshold. "Thanks," he said, with a little too much relief in his tone. "I really appreciate it. It's just so cold out here, and I don't want to be out there longer than I have to be." I stood there awkwardly, watching as he took my phone and began dialing. I tried to keep the conversation light. "No problem. I just hope they pick up," I said, half joking. He nodded, but instead of dialing a number, he was fiddling with the phone, looking at the screen like he was trying to figure out how to use it. This is where things started to feel wrong. He wasn't calling anyone. It took me a moment to process it, but then it clicked. The guy wasn't locked out of his apartment at all. He was stalling. I had been tricked into handing over my phone to a stranger under the guise of a simple request. I glanced around, wondering if anyone in the building had noticed the exchange, but everything seemed eerily quiet. The hallway was empty. My mind started racing as I considered what to do. I was alone, with a stranger in my doorway, holding my phone. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and asked, "So, what's the number for the landlord?" The man hesitated for a moment, then shrugged nonchalantly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "I don't have it. I guess I'll just wait for him to call me back. No big deal." Now, everything about this situation screamed wrong. Something in my gut was telling me to get out of the conversation as quickly as possible. "Look, I think you should leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart was racing. The guy gave me an odd look, like he hadn't expected the change in tone.
What?
"What do you mean?" "I'm just not comfortable with this," I said, stepping back, trying to maintain some distance while also trying not to provoke him. The man didn't react immediately. There was an awkward silence where we both just stood there, sizing each other up. For a second, I thought he might lash out or try something. But he didn't. Instead, he mumbled something under his breath, turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, more confused than ever. I closed the door quickly and locked it, my heart still racing. I immediately called my landlord to tell him what had just happened, and he seemed just as confused as I was. He told me there was no record of any tenant being locked out and that no one had been in need of assistance. I spent the next hour in a haze, trying to figure out if I'd just narrowly avoided a robbery or if this was some elaborate scam. My gut told me something was off about that guy, and my gut rarely lies. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I had narrowly escaped a much worse situation. The next day, I found out through a neighbor that a similar incident had happened with a different tenant just a few days before. A man had come by, asking to borrow a phone, and then disappeared after getting the phone. The police were involved in that case, but nothing had come of it. I still can't shake the feeling that something much worse could have happened if I hadn't trusted my instincts. I'm more cautious now. I've installed a security camera at my front door and made sure my locks are secure. Moral of the story: trust your gut, and if a stranger ever asks to borrow your phone, don't hesitate to say no. End of story. Hey, friends! If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. It all started a few weeks ago when I decided to take the plunge and move to a new city for a job. After months of job hunting, I finally landed a great position at a marketing agency in a city that seemed full of opportunity. I was excited. New job, new city, new life, right? I packed up everything I owned, kissed my friends and family goodbye, and got on the road. I was a little nervous about the move, but I figured that's normal. My new apartment was on the 7th floor of a high-rise building, and it looked perfect. The place was a bit small, but the view was amazing, and I could see the entire downtown area. Plus, I had a grocery store and a coffee shop within walking distance. It felt like a dream. The first few days were a blur. I was busy settling into my apartment, attending orientation at work, and meeting my new colleagues. My new coworkers were great, and they made the transition so much easier. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Then came the day that changed everything. I had a meeting scheduled for 10 a.m. with my new boss, Emma. She was in her early 30s, smart and sharp as a tack. I'd heard from other employees that she was no nonsense, but she was also pretty down to earth. She had a reputation for being very direct and honest, which I liked. In fact, when I first met her, she was welcoming and made me feel at home in the office. That morning, I woke up a little later than I intended, but nothing too drastic. I jumped into the shower, threw on an outfit that was a mix of business casual. I still wasn't sure about the dress code, and got ready to leave. I grabbed a coffee from the place down the street and was on my way to the office by 9:30. The walk was nice, but as I approached the building, I realized I hadn't eaten breakfast. And as the world often does, my stomach decided to remind me of this at that exact moment by growling so loud that it could probably be heard across the street. I looked around for a solution, and as luck would have it, I spotted a food truck parked just outside the office building. It was a bright yellow truck with the words "Fresh Crepes" painted across the side. It smelled incredible. I had eaten crepes before, but it had never crossed my mind that I could get them on my walk to work. As my stomach continued to make its demands, I figured this was the universe's way of giving me a sign. I approached the truck and saw the vendor, an older man with a thick mustache and a friendly smile. He asked what I wanted, and I hesitated for a second. I wasn't sure whether I wanted something sweet or savory. In the end, I decided on a savory crepe with cheese, ham, and some mushrooms. I paid the man and took the crepe, balancing it in one hand as I walked into the office building. My meeting with Emma was in 30 minutes, and I was feeling a bit rushed, so I hastily scarfed down half of the crepe while riding the elevator to the 5th floor. It was delicious, but a little too cheesy, and I felt myself becoming slightly bloated. The elevator reached my floor, and I immediately regretted eating so much. I tried to shake it off, telling myself that I would be fine. It was just a little bloated feeling, nothing that would ruin the day, right? I walked into the office and quickly found Emma's office, knocking before entering. She greeted me with a smile and motioned for me to sit down. "Good morning. How's everything going so far? Settling in okay?" she asked as I sat across from her. "Yeah, everything's been great so far," I replied, forcing a smile. At this point, I was trying to push past the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach, but it was getting worse by the second. I could feel a bit of nausea creeping up, but I didn't want to seem unprofessional. We spent the next 10 minutes chatting about my onboarding process, the projects I'd be working on, and what was expected from me. Honestly, the whole conversation was a blur because all I could think about was how bloated and sick I felt. I tried to focus, but it was becoming harder to stay engaged. At one point, I shifted in my seat, trying to relieve some of the pressure on my stomach. That's when it happened. I felt a sudden, violent rumble in my abdomen. It was unmistakable, the feeling that something was going terribly wrong. Before I had time to think, I felt a pressure building in my lower stomach and knew immediately that I was in deep trouble. There was no stopping it. I tried to subtly shift in my chair to prevent the inevitable, but it was too late. With a loud, unmistakable fart, I involuntarily released what can only be described as a full-blown gas explosion. For a moment, everything was silent. Emma stared at me, her eyes wide in shock. My face went white. I had no idea what to do. The sound was loud, unmistakable, and the smell was immediate. It was the kind of smell that felt like it was slowly suffocating the air in the room. The worst part? Emma didn't say anything for what felt like an eternity. I was frozen in place, unable to move or speak. Finally, she broke the silence. Are you okay?" she asked, looking at me with a mix of concern and confusion. I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came out. Instead, I could only muster a weak, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." Another rumble echoed from my stomach, and before I could stop it, I accidentally released another, even louder fart. It was as if my body was rebelling against me, and I had zero control over it. Emma's eyes widened again. She looked at me for a second before her expression softened slightly, and she burst out laughing. Okay, it's all right," she said, holding her hand up.
Don't worry about it.
"Seriously, just maybe step outside for a minute? I'll be here when you're ready." I felt like I wanted to die. I could feel the heat rising in my face as I stood up and awkwardly walked out of her office, the sound of Emma's laughter echoing in my ears. I stepped into the hallway and took a few deep breaths, trying to regain my composure. I could already tell that the rest of the day was going to be unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. After a few minutes, I walked back to her office, trying to act normal. Emma was still smiling but had clearly recovered from the initial shock. "Well," she said, still chuckling, "that was definitely something. Let's just pretend that didn't happen, all right?" I nodded, still mortified, and we continued with the meeting. But from that moment on, I knew that this day would haunt me forever. The first impression I made at my new job? An explosive one. The worst part is that the next few weeks at work were filled with people giving me strange looks, and some of my coworkers even started making farting jokes. It became a running joke, and though I tried to laugh it off, I still felt embarrassed every time it came up. But as the days went on, I realized that Emma had been cool about it. In fact, she seemed to genuinely enjoy the fact that I didn't let it ruin my day, and we even laughed about it once or twice. Eventually, I got over it, but I still make sure to avoid heavy breakfast crepes on important meeting days. So yeah, TLDR. Had a meeting with my new boss, ate a heavy crepe too close to the meeting, and ended up farting loudly and uncontrollably twice in front of her. Now I'm known as the fart guy at work. So, I thought I was being a helpful, responsible adult last weekend when I decided to take my grandma to the grocery store. She's 82, sharp as a tack, but isn't as steady on her feet anymore, so I thought, why not go out, get some fresh air, and let her knock out the shopping she's been needing to do? I'm in my late 20s, and I'd like to think of myself as a relatively good grandson. I do the usual things, call her once a week, check in on her, and do the occasional errand. But this time, I took things a bit too far. It all started when she mentioned she was out of her favorite frozen dinners. She lives in a small apartment and typically keeps her meals simple. She's always stocked up on frozen lasagnas, chicken nuggets, and those weird, microwavable meat and potato packs that never seem to be very appetizing to anyone under 70. I decided it would be nice to make this a bit of a trip. We get those frozen meals, maybe some fresh fruits, and even some treats I could bring home for the family. Plus, I figured I could make her laugh and cheer her up with a little joke while we were out. It would be a fun day for both of us. We got to the store without incident. I was pushing the cart, and she was walking beside me with her cane, holding onto the handle for support. I knew the layout of the store pretty well, so I led the way straight to the frozen food section. That's when I started to feel a little overconfident. The frozen dinners were near the back of the aisle, so instead of just grabbing a few and heading out, I thought, let's have some fun and see if we can get her to try something new. Grandma, I said, how about we try some of these healthy frozen meals? Look, they have ones with quinoa, kale, and sweet potatoes. They're supposed to be really good for you. She squinted at the boxes for a second, her face scrunching up like she'd just bitten into a sour lemon.
No.
I like my lasagna. It's what I know.
Come on, Grandma. You could use a change.
Look at all these fancy options.
And that's where it went south.
She hesitated, eyeing the healthy meals but still clinging to her old favorites. I was persistent, though. I could feel my helpful grandson mode kicking in. All right, I said, picking out a box of the quinoa and sweet potato lasagna and tossing it into the cart. This one's basically the same, but better for you. Trust me, it'll taste the same and you'll love it. She rolled her eyes and sighed but didn't argue. I thought I had won. It felt like I was doing something noble, like I was making her life better. I even grabbed a few more things, some frozen salmon fillets, a new kind of frozen veggie mix, and a fancy-looking salad kit. I was feeling good. We continued shopping for another 10 minutes, picking up fruit, some yogurt, and a few other bits and pieces. At one point, Grandma needed to take a rest, so we sat down on one of the benches by the pharmacy section. She started telling me about how she used to come to this same store with my grandfather, and the memories were starting to make her a little emotional. I put my arm around her and told her not to worry. It was a sweet moment. Then, when we were ready to check out, the cashier greeted us with a smile, scanning the items. As the total started to rack up, I realized we had gone a little overboard with the frozen food section. The quinoa lasagna was $10.99, and I had grabbed 3 boxes of it. Plus, the salmon fillets, veggies, and other gourmet frozen stuff were pushing the total up even more. The cashier didn't seem to bat an eye, but I could feel the panic creeping in. I was on a budget, and I hadn't planned for this much spending. Grandma, ever the one to be frugal, noticed the total and frowned.
You didn't have to get all of that, she said.
I only needed a couple dinners, not the fancy stuff. I tried to play it off. It's no problem, Grandma. I've got it covered. I just wanted you to try something new, that's all. Right, she said, raising an eyebrow but not pushing the matter further. We paid and headed out to the car. By the time we got home, I was starting to feel that familiar pit in my stomach. I realized that I had way overdone it. The car was full of things she didn't ask for, things she might never eat, and I was going to have to deal with the consequences of my helpful idea. We brought everything inside, and I started unloading the bags. Grandma immediately gravitated to her beloved frozen lasagnas and shoved the new, healthy options to the side. I could tell she wasn't thrilled, but She didn't say much. I quickly tucked the boxes of quinoa lasagna into the back of her freezer, hoping they'd go unnoticed for a while. I didn't want to face the music yet. Fast forward to Monday. Grandma called me early in the morning, sounding frantic. "Hey, sweetie," she said, "those fancy frozen dinners you got me, they taste terrible. I tried one last night, and it was like eating cardboard with a side of grass." "What did you get me?" I was cringing, already knowing where this was headed. Grandma, I'm sorry. I thought you'd like them. They're supposed to be healthier, but they're just a little different." Different? The only thing different about it is that I had to throw it away. I don't know what's wrong with these young people today. Why would anyone ruin a perfectly good lasagna with quinoa? Do you want me to send you a picture of the leftovers? It looked like someone had packed up a salad and tried to put it in a lasagna pan.
Ugh.
I chuckled nervously. "Grandma, I'm really sorry. I'll make it up to you. Maybe I can bring over some real lasagna this weekend." She wasn't done, though. "And another thing," she continued, "I tried the salmon last night, too. It was so fishy. I thought I was eating straight from the ocean." "What is this newfangled stuff you're bringing me?" I groaned inwardly. "Okay, Grandma, no more fancy meals. I promise I'll just stick to the classic stuff from now on." She let out a dramatic sigh.
Good.
"Stick to what works. I don't need any of your gourmet nonsense." That evening, I sat down with my phone to send her a message, apologizing once more for being overzealous. As I was typing, I noticed that the packages of quinoa lasagna and other healthy frozen meals were still sitting in her freezer, untouched. I was starting to think maybe I'd learned my lesson. In the end, the day was still a success. Grandma and I got to spend time together, even if I did ruin her diet for a few days. Lesson learned. Don't try to be the hero by pushing your dietary preferences onto a stubborn, 82-year-old woman who has been eating the same thing for 40 years. So yeah, TIFU by trying to introduce my grandma to healthy frozen dinners, which she hated so much, she almost threw a fit over the phone. I'll never try to change her shopping habits again. TIFU by pretending to know how to fix a leaking pipe and nearly flooding my entire apartment complex.
So, here's the thing.
I'm a 24-year-old guy living in a small, one-bedroom apartment. I don't exactly have a lot of extra cash lying around, so when my kitchen sink started leaking, I didn't want to call a plumber. I mean, how hard could it be to fix a little drip, right? I'm pretty handy. I can build furniture, change light bulbs, fix a leaky faucet, basic stuff. What's a pipe, really? At least, that's what I told myself. It started innocently enough. One morning, I noticed that my kitchen sink had a small drip coming from under the cabinet. It wasn't much, just a few drops here and there. But I knew if I didn't fix it soon, it could get worse. I'd heard horror stories from friends about leaking pipes, so I decided to tackle it head-on. Plus, I figured it would save me $100 or so if I did it myself. I didn't know the first thing about plumbing, but Google is my best friend, so I spent about 10 minutes watching a YouTube tutorial that promised to solve all my problems. The video made it look easy. Just turn off the water, unscrew this part, and replace the seal, the guy said, grinning like this was the easiest thing in the world. The next part, however, made me hesitate for a second. He mentioned that a small leak could indicate a much bigger problem that might require more advanced tools, or possibly even pipe replacement. But no big deal, right? I was confident. I could handle this. I grabbed my toolkit, turned off the water supply under the sink, and set to work. The first few steps were easy enough. I unscrewed the drain pipe, took it apart, and stared at it like I was some kind of genius. But here's where things started to go south. As I tried to remove the rubber seal, a small chunk of the pipe just broke off. I wasn't sure if it was from the old age of the pipe or if I did something wrong, but now I was dealing with a broken piece of pipe.
I tried to stay calm.
I would just go to the hardware store and pick up a replacement part. Simple. So I went to the store, told the guy at the counter what I needed, and he handed me a couple of fittings and seals. I felt like a pro now. Armed with my new parts, I went back home, ready to fix this once and for all. I thought about it for a second. Maybe I should call a plumber. But then I remembered how much money I was going to save and decided against it. Back at the apartment, I reassembled the pipe as per the tutorial. But when I turned the water back on, there was an alarming noise. The sound was a bit like a whooshing, gurgling sound that made me think the water pressure was just higher than usual. But that's normal, right? I shrugged it off and hoped for the best. Then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of water dripping onto the floor. I rushed under the sink to inspect the scene and saw that water was pouring out of one of the joints I had just installed. I panicked for a second but quickly tried to tighten the fittings. That didn't help. The water just kept coming, and soon enough, I noticed that the leak had worsened. I started seeing water pooling on the floor around the cabinet. This wasn't just a drip anymore. It was a steady stream. At this point, I was sweating. The apartment was still dry, but I knew I had to act fast. I turned off the water again, but the damage was already done. I called my landlord, who didn't pick up, and then sent a frantic text. No reply. By now, I was in full-on crisis mode, pacing around the apartment. I started to feel a deep sense of dread. What if this thing didn't get fixed, and my entire apartment flooded? What would I tell my neighbors? Would I be responsible for the damage? I quickly grabbed the parts one had bought and ran back to the store to return them and get something more substantial. The guy behind the counter looked at me like I was a total idiot. You need to replace the whole pipe system under the sink, he said. You're gonna have to call a professional for something like that. At this point, I felt like an absolute moron. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no business trying to fix this myself. Desperate, I finally called a plumber. He was busy, but after hearing my frantic story, he agreed to come over and take a look. When he arrived, it felt like a scene out of a bad sitcom. I was standing there, my apartment smelling faintly of mildew from the spilled water, apologizing profusely for the mess. The plumber didn't look too impressed. Let's take a look at this, he said, stepping into my kitchen. He immediately spotted what I had done wrong. Apparently, I had put the wrong type of fittings on the pipe, and instead of stopping the leak, I had made it worse. You could have flooded the whole place, he said, shaking his head. Lucky for you, it's not as bad as it could have been. He fixed the issue in about 30 minutes. The whole time, I stood there, humiliated but grateful. I learned a lot that day, mainly that YouTube tutorials are not a substitute for actual knowledge and experience. The plumber left, and I sat in my apartment, feeling like I had just narrowly avoided a disaster. Now, whenever I see a leaking pipe or anything plumbing related, I immediately call an expert. I've learned my lesson. The best part? My landlord still hasn't responded to my messages, but I think they're just relieved I didn't flood the place. Lesson learned. If you don't know what you're doing, it's probably better to leave it to the professionals. And don't ever try to save money by pretending to know what you're doing when it comes to plumbing. It's not worth it. But hey, at least my pipes are fixed now. I think. Moral of the story, it's better to admit when you're out of your depth than risk becoming the guy who floods an entire apartment complex. That's not a reputation anyone wants. So I had always considered myself a pretty chill guy, the kind of person who doesn't get too worked up over minor annoyances. That was until I found myself in a situation where my lack of attention to detail turned an average day into what can only be described as a complete and utter disaster. It all started with a seemingly harmless decision to try something new in my routine. A little background, I've always been one of those people who prefers to keep things simple. I don't go for complicated meals, and my wardrobe consists mostly of jeans and t-shirts. I'm not into buying fancy gadgets, and I generally stick to what I know. This is important because it sets the stage for what happened next. It was a Saturday morning, and I had just gotten back from my regular jog around the neighborhood. The weather was perfect, sunny with a slight breeze, the kind of day that makes you think things might be going right. I was feeling good, and after the run, I decided to treat myself to a breakfast out. I live in a pretty quiet part of the city, so there's a little cafe nearby that I like to go to on weekends when I want to unwind and enjoy a slow breakfast. On this particular Saturday, I thought, why not try something new? Instead of my usual black coffee and toast, I decided to go for one of their special smoothies. It seemed like a healthy, refreshing choice, especially after the jog. I walk into the cafe, order the smoothie, and sit by the window with my phone. As I'm scrolling through social media, I hear a voice call my name. It's the barista handing me my drink. I smile, thank her, and take a sip. Immediately, I'm hit with a weird taste. It's not bad, just different. It has a weird sweetness that I can't place, and it's kind of thick, almost like I'm drinking pudding. I don't know what kind of smoothie I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't this. I figure it's probably just an ingredient I'm not used to, so I drink a little more, convincing myself that it's fine. By the time I finish the whole thing, though, something starts to feel off. I start feeling slightly nauseous, and I get this strange sensation in my stomach that can only be described as a weird sort of heaviness. My head feels foggy, like the kind of feeling you get after eating something that doesn't sit right with you. I try to ignore it. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, I think. I stand up to leave, pay the bill, and step outside into the bright sunlight. The fresh air hits me, but I don't feel any better. In fact, I feel worse. I start to notice that my vision is a bit blurry, and my legs feel strangely unsteady. I tell myself it's just a sugar rush from the smoothie, but deep down I know it's something more. I make my way home, and by the time I reach my front door, I'm starting to feel like I'm about to collapse. I fumble for my keys, open the door, and stagger inside. As soon as I close the door behind me, my stomach flips, and I know something is seriously wrong. I barely make it to the bathroom before I start vomiting. At this point, I'm sweating and shaking, and I'm honestly panicking. I've never felt like this before. But here's the kicker. I don't have any idea what's going on. I try to sit on the bathroom floor, leaning against the tub, feeling like I'm about to die. I glance around the room, and that's when I see the smoothie cup still sitting on the counter. That's when it hits me. Maybe the smoothie wasn't just a weird combination of fruits or weird ingredients. Maybe the smoothie had something else. Something that wasn't supposed to be in it. I look at the cup again, and that's when I notice something strange. There's a label on the side that I hadn't noticed before. It's a small label that says, "Contains CBD." I freeze. My stomach churns. Oh no. It turns out that the smoothie I'd ordered was part of a new relaxation menu that the cafe had started offering, but they hadn't exactly made it clear what was in the drinks. I hadn't paid much attention when I ordered because I was too focused on the fruit options, and of course, I assumed CBD was just a trendy ingredient for wellness. I had no idea that it would be so potent, or that it would affect me this much. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could you not know? CBD is everywhere these days. But the truth is, I've never really paid attention to CBD, and I'd never tried it before. I didn't know how it worked, how much you needed to feel its effects, or how it might affect people differently. And the cafe? They didn't mention anything about the strength of the CBD dosage in their smoothies. It was just CBD infused, as if that was enough of a description. As I sit there on the bathroom floor, my mind starts to race. I'm getting more and more paranoid, imagining the worst. Did I drink too much? Is something wrong with me? Am I going to pass out? I start Googling CBD overdose symptoms, and naturally, I find a bunch of horror stories about people getting way too high after accidentally consuming too much CBD or THC. I'm freaking out at this point. I call my best friend, who's a lot more knowledgeable about these things, and after I explain the situation, she starts laughing. She tells me it's probably just the CBD kicking in, and that I should just relax and wait it out. Apparently, it can make you feel disoriented and lethargic for a while. I'm still feeling awful, but at least my panic starts to subside. I lie down on the couch and try to calm myself. About an hour later, I start to feel more like myself again. Less dizzy, less nauseous, and no longer on the verge of a meltdown. But I can't shake the embarrassment of the whole situation. How could I have been so careless? How could I have missed the fact that CBD was in the smoothie, especially since it had clearly been labeled? Eventually, the worst of it passes, but the whole experience leaves me shaken. I have never been so grateful to feel normal again. I also vow to pay better attention to what I'm putting into my body from now on, and I definitely won't be ordering any more mystery smoothies in the future. So, here's my tip to anyone reading this. Always check the labels and never assume that the wellness drinks at trendy cafes are just harmless juice blends. You never know what you're actually getting. I learned that lesson the hard way. And if you see me at that cafe again, you can bet I'll be sticking to the black coffee. No more surprises for me. TIFU by accidentally sending my boss a very inappropriate message on Slack. It was supposed to be a regular Tuesday. I was in the office sipping my coffee, trying to wake up enough to get my brain to function properly. Like most mornings, I was scrolling through Slack, responding to a couple of messages from colleagues. Nothing too exciting was happening. It was all just routine work stuff. Then, I received a message from my friend, Josh, who works in another department. We've been friends for years, and even though we don't work directly together, we chat pretty frequently during the workday. He sent me a message that started with, "Yo, did you see the new meme I posted in the group chat?" Now, I don't know about you, but I love memes. They're my lifeline during the workday. I opened Slack on my phone to check it out. But here's the thing, I had a group chat with Josh, but I also had a group chat with my team, including my boss, Amy. This is where things start to go south. Instead of responding to Josh's message in our private group chat, I somehow, don't ask me how, ended up replying in the team's group chat with Amy, my boss. Now, let me remind you, my team chat is for professional purposes only. We share project updates, ask for help, and occasionally joke around about work-related things. Definitely not the place for personal memes, let alone anything inappropriate. I was half awake, scrolling through Slack without paying attention, and my thumbs just kind of took over. I hit reply, without double-checking where I was. So, without realizing what I'd done, I typed the following message. "Yo, you won't believe the meme I just saw. It's so good. Wait until you see the dog in a tutu doing the Macarena." Classic. Honestly, it's like, oh wait, never mind. I meant to send this to Josh. But here's the problem. I didn't realize that I was not messaging Josh at all. I had sent this gem of a message directly to my boss, Amy, and the entire team. For a split second, I thought, okay, no big deal. They'll just think I was joking around or something. I mean, surely, right? I could always explain it away later.
But no.
The moment I saw that my boss, Amy, had typed back, I knew I was in trouble. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, watching her little typing bubble appear and disappear, wondering what she was going to say. She finally replied with, "Is this some sort of inside joke I don't understand? Also, I thought we were focusing on the presentation for tomorrow. Maybe a little less dog dancing, a little more work?" And that's when it hit me. Oh God. Amy had just read my message. The one about the dog in a tutu. That was the message she saw. The very same message I never, ever wanted her to see. I wanted to crawl into a hole and die right there in the office. I couldn't believe it. I quickly typed a response, trying to salvage some dignity. "Sorry, Amy. That was meant for Josh. I wasn't thinking clearly. I'll get back to the presentation right away." But that wasn't enough. No. That would have been too easy. The entire team started chiming in. My coworker Mark, who's got a weird sense of humor, responded with, "Yo, I mean, who doesn't love a good dog in a tutu, right?" Face with tears of joy, but yeah, presentations are important too. Maybe save the Macarena for after the big meeting? And then Sarah, another team member who has a habit of overanalyzing everything, wrote, "Wait, what do you mean by dog in a tutu? Is that some sort of metaphor for our current project status? Like, are we really that far behind? Is the dog in a tutu us, just trying to keep it together but barely managing?" At this point, my face was bright red. I couldn't type fast enough. I was trying to backpedal, trying to explain to Amy that it was a joke gone horribly wrong, but my words just weren't coming out right. Meanwhile, Amy responded with, "It's fine, just let's stay on task, alright? And maybe try not to send dog memes to the whole team in the future." I could feel the awkwardness seeping through the screen. Everyone knew what had happened, and there was no escaping it. The team chat was now full of memes, and even though most of them were intended to lighten the mood, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had completely messed up. But it didn't stop there. The next day, when we had our team meeting, it became even worse. Amy, bless her heart, tried to be professional about it, but I could tell she was holding back a laugh the entire time. During the meeting, she decided to subtly address the elephant in the room. "So, about the presentation for tomorrow, and the dog in a tutu situation. Let's just make sure that's not how we present our ideas, okay? A little less spontaneous and a little more polished." The whole room burst into laughter, and I could feel the weight of embarrassment settle on my shoulders. I wanted to melt into the floor, but instead, I awkwardly chuckled along with them. Honestly, I didn't know what else to do. The damage was done, and I just had to live with it. After the meeting, Josh sent me a message, laughing hysterically at what had happened. He said he couldn't believe I had sent that to the entire team, especially my boss. We joked about it for a while, but I could tell he was also kind of relieved that it hadn't been him who had made that mistake. That day, I learned a valuable lesson. 1. Never scroll through Slack half awake, especially when you're about to send a message. 2. Always double-check who you're messaging before you hit send, or you might end up in a meeting where your boss casually drops in a comment about dog in a tutu. And 3. Even though you think you can recover from an embarrassing moment, sometimes it sticks with you longer than you'd like. I can only hope that, over time, my boss will forget about the whole thing, and that we'll be able to move on from this awkward incident. But at the very least, it's now part of office lore. And I'll forever be known as the guy who sent a meme about a dog in a tutu to the entire team, including his boss.
Classic me.
But hey, at least now I know. If I'm going to send memes to Josh, they better stay in the private chat. Never again will I risk sending my morning meme to the wrong audience. Never again. This happened last week, and I'm still trying to recover from the pure chaos that followed. So for context, I'm a 35-year-old guy, and my wife, let's call her Sarah, is 34. We've been married for 5 years, and she has this running joke that I'm always oblivious to my surroundings. I'm not even going to pretend it's not true. I'm the guy who walks into the wrong car at the gas station, or waves back at someone who is actually waving to the person behind me. You get the picture. Last weekend, we were at this big, chaotic birthday party for Sarah's niece. Think, kids screaming, adults yelling over each other, people constantly walking in and out of the house, and just general sensory overload. At some point, Sarah asked me to go grab her phone from the kitchen. She had set it down earlier while helping her sister with party stuff. Now, my wife has a black iPhone 14 with a blue pop socket on the back. Very standard. I walk into the kitchen, see a phone that matches that exact description on the counter, and pick it up. It lights up and, miracle of miracles, it unlocks with Face ID when I glance at it. I'm surprised, but not that surprised, because Sarah has joked before that I look enough like her for Face ID to work in certain lighting. I chalk it up to that and go back outside. She's talking to someone, so I just tap her on the arm and hand her the phone. She doesn't look down, just grabs it, says thanks, and slides it into her back pocket. 10 minutes later, a woman I don't recognize comes storming out of the house, looking around wildly. She's in her early 30s, clearly annoyed, and holding a nearly identical phone in her hand. She walks over to Sarah and goes, "Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I think you might have my phone." Now Sarah's confused. She pulls the phone out of her pocket, looks at it, and immediately realizes, yeah, this phone is not hers. Different background, no case, the pop socket must have popped off, and a bunch of notifications from some group chat she's not in. She turns to me and goes, "Wait, where did you get this?" And I point to the kitchen like an idiot and say, "That's where yours was, right?" Cue a 10-minute back and forth with the other woman, who is, understandably, freaking out. She's like, "How did you even unlock my phone?" And I'm standing there like an idiot going, "I thought it was my wife's, and it just unlocked." At first, I think she doesn't believe me. She looks me dead in the eye and says, "Did you go through my phone?" I swear on everything I've ever loved, I did not. It opened to the home screen, and I turned the screen off immediately. But now the whole backyard has kind of gone quiet, and everyone's looking at me like I just committed a felony. Sarah's trying to defend me, but it's not a great look. Some random guy picks up a woman's phone, it unlocks with his face, and he doesn't notice anything's off. The other woman starts going through her recent activity, paranoid that I've read her texts or looked at photos. I'm standing there sweating bullets, trying to explain that I'm just really, really dumb, and none of this was malicious. Then the woman's husband gets involved. He's not yelling, but he's definitely tense and standing a little too close. He keeps saying things like, "You're telling me this guy's face unlocked my wife's phone?" And I'm like, "Yes, I know." It makes zero sense. Maybe we look alike. It only gets worse from there. Eventually, she tries Face ID again with her own face, and it fails.
Twice.
That's when everyone realizes what actually happened. Somehow, my face got registered as an alternate appearance on her phone's Face ID. We don't know when or how. It turns out she had gotten a new phone a few weeks ago and restored it from an old backup. In her words, "I let my cousin mess with it during setup. Maybe he did something weird." Guess who the cousin is? That's right. It's me. I met her briefly at a wedding 2 years ago, apparently played some dumb game on her old phone with her cousin, who's a mutual friend of mine, and must have scanned my face into Face ID by accident while helping him set up a prank lock screen. I don't remember this at all. But when she goes back through her iCloud and checks her backup settings, yep, there's a saved face that isn't hers. So I didn't just randomly unlock her phone. Asterisk, I was an authorized user. Asterisk. Everyone starts laughing. Like, hard.
Except me.
I'm still in a state of fight or flight, convinced I'm going to jail, or at least getting booted from the family barbecue forever. Sarah thinks it's the funniest thing she's ever seen. For the rest of the party, she keeps calling me Mr. Biometric Security. Her sister starts making jokes about how I'm the family locksmith. Even the woman whose phone it was eventually relaxes, though I'm pretty sure she deleted every backup that night and changed all her passwords. The husband, bless him, claps me on the back and says, "Well, now you're part of the family whether you like it or not." Which is honestly kind of threatening.
So yeah.
I accidentally unlocked a stranger's phone with my face, handed it to my wife thinking it was hers, and ended up unintentionally outing myself as a secret iCloud intruder from a wedding 2 years ago. The worst part? Sarah now refuses to carry a case on her phone. She says if I love her, I'll learn to tell them apart. I absolutely will not. TIFU by accidentally convincing my wife I had a secret family. So this happened over the course of 2 very long, excruciating days last week, and I'm just now able to laugh about it. A bit. I, 34M, work in tech and frequently travel for client meetings. My wife, 33F, let's call her Emily, works remotely full-time, so she stays home when I'm gone. We've been married for 5 years, together for 8, and we've always been big on transparency. No secrets, no shady stuff. Which makes this entire story so much worse. Last week, I had to fly from Seattle to San Jose for a 2-day meeting with a startup we've been consulting. I packed light, just to carry on, and promised to FaceTime Emily each night. Everything was normal until the second day. The meeting wrapped earlier than expected, so I decided to surprise Emily by catching an earlier flight home. My original flight landed at 10:45 p.m., but I managed to hop on one that landed around 5:30 p.m. I didn't text her I was coming early, figured I'd do the classic rom-com surprise. Flowers and everything. That was my first mistake. When I landed, I realized I had time to kill, so I stopped at a grocery store near our house to grab her favorite wine and sushi. Yes, she's a sushi fiend. The parking lot was packed, so I parked around the corner and walked in. As I'm walking out, I bump into a woman I vaguely recognize. She does a double take and says, "Oh wow, Liam?" My name's Liam, for reference. She looks familiar, but I can't place her. She's holding a toddler and wearing workout gear, clearly mid-errand. I go, "Hey? Sorry, remind me where we met." And she says, "Tessa? From high school? We had bio together." And then I remember. She was in my class senior year and dated one of my friends. We make small talk. She says she just moved back to town after divorce. The kid is her daughter, Emma. I do the usual polite, "Oh, she's so cute" thing, and the kid randomly decides I'm her new best friend and grabs my hand. We chat for literally 3 minutes, tops. I say goodbye, walk back to my car with my little bag of romantic supplies, and drive home. Now here's where things go from sitcom to full-blown psychological thriller. I walk in through the garage. The house is dark, which I expected. I go into the kitchen, set the stuff down, and sneak upstairs. Emily's in the shower. I decide to wait in the bedroom and get ready to do the whole surprise I'm home early thing. As she walks out of the bathroom, she sees me and screams. Not like a cute surprise scream, like a blood-curdling, full-volume panic screech. Drops her towel, grabs a lamp, our wedding gift from her aunt, RIP, and hurls it at me. I dodge mostly. I'm like, what the hell? It's me. And she just stares at me, eyes huge, hands shaking. When she can finally breathe again, she just goes, "You said your flight wasn't until 10. I know. I caught an earlier one. I wanted to surprise you." She looks terrified. Not surprised, not confused. Terrified. And then angry. "Where were you today?" "I told you meetings. It wrapped early, so I—" "Don't lie to me, Liam." I'm stunned. "What are you talking about?" She pulls out her phone and shows me a picture. It's me, standing outside the grocery store, with Tessa and her kid, holding the kid's hand. The photo was taken from behind a car window, from a distance. "I saw you when I was driving to Trader Joe's. I thought, that looks like Liam, but then I saw the kid and the woman, and I thought, no way. But I circled back, took this, and I've been sitting here for 2 hours convincing myself I'm crazy." At this point, I realize I'm about 2 seconds from a full-blown marital apocalypse. I try to explain. I tell her about Tessa, the random run-in, the polite convo, the hand-holding toddler. But it sounds fake as hell. Even to me. She's silent. She just walks past me, picks up her phone, and walks out of the house. She's gone for 5 hours. When she comes back, she doesn't say a word, just goes to bed. I'm sitting in the living room staring at the wall like I'm in an indie film, wondering how the hell a 3-minute chat outside a QFC turned into my own personal Gone Girl. The next morning, she asks for the name of the hotel I stayed at. Wants to see my boarding passes, too. I show her everything. Call the airline and have them confirm my flight change. I even call my coworker on speakerphone and make him confirm the meeting and the early wrap. She listens, nods slowly, and goes, "Okay. Just okay. No apology. No sorry for accusing you of secret fathering a child with your high school lab partner. Just okay." So I decide to track down Tessa. Not because I want revenge or drama, but because I need Emily to know how insane this was. I message her on Facebook, politely explain what happened, and ask if she'd be willing to text my wife and confirm that our conversation was just a run-in. She replies with, "OMG, that explains why your wife messaged me. You can have him. I hope your daughter has his lying eyes." Yeah, that happened. Anyway, to her credit, Tessa took it well. She even called Emily, told her she hadn't seen me in 15 years before that day, confirmed she'd only moved to town the week before, and that her daughter just randomly likes strangers. Said she was so sorry for any trouble. And finally, Emily believed me. She broke down crying and admitted she'd been feeling off about our relationship for a few months and thought she was seeing signs. Like me traveling more, being on my phone more, I got promoted in January and have been working 60-hour weeks and being distant, which I honestly hadn't noticed. We had a long, painful, brutally honest talk. It ended with her hugging me and sobbing, "I'm so sorry. I wanted to believe you. But that picture." So yeah, that's how I got accused of having a secret family, because a toddler grabbed my hand in a grocery store parking lot. This happened last month, but the fallout is still unfolding and I'm still trying to get my name cleared. I, 32M, work as an activities coordinator for a local community center. It's a pretty chill job most of the time, plan events, coordinate volunteers, set up spaces for different groups to use, that sort of thing. One of the recurring gigs is managing a weekly bingo night that's open to local retirement homes. We have a big hall, lots of tables, a decent sound system, and snacks, so it's popular. Usually we host one retirement community at a time and they rotate weekly. Well, I decided to switch things up and host a mega bingo night. The idea was to bring in 2 retirement homes at once, make it a little competitive, spice up the prizes, and just generally give the evening a little more oomph. It sounded fun in theory. Harmless. A way to get more people socializing and give the regulars something new. The 2 homes I invited were Shady Pines and Silver Grove. I had no idea, none, that these 2 places had a history. Now, keep in mind I'm not from this town originally. I moved here about 3 years ago. Apparently, There's been an unofficial rivalry between the residents of these two retirement homes for decades. Like high school football level animosity, but instead of jocks and pep rallies, it's passive-aggressive lawn displays and vicious bridge games. I didn't find out any of this until it was way too late. The evening started normally enough. Both groups arrived by bus, some with wheelchairs and walkers, others surprisingly spry and ready to party. I had made little table signs for each home and arranged them on opposite sides of the hall, not realizing I'd just recreated the seating arrangement of a Cold War summit. Tension started building immediately. One woman from Shady Pines saw a man from Silver Grove wearing what I guess was a vintage bowling team jacket and muttered, "Oh, great, they brought him," under her breath. He must have heard, because he gave her a two-fingered salute that did not look respectful. Still, the bingo began, and for a while it was smooth sailing. I'd even created a little scoreboard that tracked which home had more wins. Innocent, right? I thought it might encourage a little playful competitiveness. What it actually did was stoke the flames of a long-dormant blood feud. About halfway through, someone from Silver Grove, an elderly woman named Doris who's all of 4 feet 10 inches and looks like she could barely blow out birthday candles, shouted bingo during a game. I walked over to verify, and yeah, she had the right numbers. I congratulated her, handed over a prize basket, and updated the scoreboard to show Silver Grove taking the lead. That's when Ethel from Shady Pines lost her mind. Apparently, Ethel and Doris have been enemies since 1973. I still don't know why, but I overheard something about a stolen husband and a sabotaged meatloaf recipe. Ethel stands up, slams both hands on her walker, and yells, "That woman wouldn't know a real bingo if it smacked her dentures loose."
Gasps.
Murmurs. Someone drops a cookie. Doris, without missing a beat, replies, "At least I didn't sleep with the priest at my daughter's wedding, Ethel." I swear to God, the air vibrated. What followed was, for lack of a better term, a geriatric riot. People started standing up and shouting. Someone hurled a tapioca pudding cup like a grenade. A man from Silver Grove flipped a table in slow motion while yelling, "You think your craft room is better than ours?" I tried to regain control. I blew my whistle. Yes, I have a whistle, but it was drowned out by the chaos. A woman from Shady Pines used her cane to jab a Silver Grove man in the ribs. He retaliated by snatching her bingo card and eating it.
Yes.
He ate it. My coworker, Jenna, ran to call security. Well, Fred, the 72-year-old volunteer we call security, while I tried to separate a literal slap fight between two women arguing over whether real butter, or I can't believe it's not butter, is better for baking. It took 20 minutes and 3 staff members to de-escalate. Fred ended up pulling the fire alarm just to scatter everyone, which worked, though several residents screamed about the war years and hit the floor. EMTs were called, but no serious injuries, thank God. I sent both homes home early with stern warnings, and the board of directors at the community center demanded a report. When they read it, they thought I was joking. I had to show them the security footage, which now lives forever in infamy in our staff group chat. My favorite moment is a slow-motion replay of a woman using her walker like a battering ram to break through a table blockade. Both retirement homes have been temporarily banned from participating in community events until further notice. I've been instructed to never, under any circumstances, try to foster inter-community competition, again without board approval. And I'm now the subject of several passive-aggressive emails from family members complaining that bingo night is supposed to be peaceful. To top it off, someone, I have my suspicions it was Ethel, left an anonymous voice message on my office phone saying, "You've stirred the pot, young man. Now you'd better learn to simmer." I don't know what that means, but I'm afraid. In summary, I tried to create a fun night of competitive bingo. I may have instead reignited a decades-old feud, caused multiple pudding-based assaults, and created what I'm told is now being referred to as the bingo brawl of 25. And I still have glitter in my shoes from the festive atmosphere decorations. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.